So my name is Asan. I'm director of Intercollege. And you?
Baby J, I'm the managing director of Baby People, which is a not-for-profit music and arts organisation in the UK.
So we have promised to have a little chat about different kind of systems and tools that we can use in our NGOs to ease our work. And I've been really looking forward for this one, mainly because I myself am a little bit old-fashioned, some of my colleagues might say. I mean, the top technology I'm using, that's email and a phone call.
Still two of the most important technologies, though.
Absolutely, absolutely. But the fancy stuff as WhatsApp and Skype and Zoom and so on, I haven't reached to that point. But you are the unofficial champion of Europe in systems and tools. So I have been looking forward to hear a little bit about what is it that you are using.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's true, but what I will say is I think it's an important topic, because I think that when we're looking at NGOs and running an organisation, there's a lot of things that will always come up. So you look at kind of project management and strategies and business plans and finance, but you don't necessarily sit there and kind of go, what are the day-to-day tools we're going to use to run these? So there isn't much training around that. And even if there was, even if you went and did a course on how to kind of, what tools, and when I say tools, we're talking about things like emails and phone and et cetera, et cetera. And if we said, what tools we're going to do to run our day-to-day operations of our organisation, we did a course in it, it's going to have changed in 6 months because technology moves so quickly. And actually the difference in, starting with this is how we do things as an organisation because this is how I've been taught, or this is how the organisation I worked for previously did it, and we're just going to stick with that. And looking at new techniques and developing more streamlined and more effective ways of doing things is massive in the impact it's going to have on how effective your organisation, is. What I will say is that new isn't always better. We have in my office, we have written in chalk on one of the beams. It says email is for confirmation, phone is for conversation.
Right.
And whilst the phone has been around forever and email has been around, or used regularly since maybe, the 90s, the phone is still a superior tool for so many different things. I mean, if I say to one of my members of staff, I want you to have a conversation with another organisation or a funder or some participants, and there's lots of things that need sorting out, and they go back and forth writing formal emails over a week, that might take a week's worth of work of going back and forth and responding to emails, waiting for a reply. Whereas actually they can pick up the phone, have a conversation, and get a load of things and possibly other things sorted out in a phone conversation much quicker than they can if they were doing it in another way. So
but I believe this is very essential, and but maybe also a generational issue. I'm sad to say, because I also see many of my younger colleagues that are maybe a bit hesitant to pick up the phone. And for me, it's the same. That when you speak with people on the phone, you get a deliberation, you develop a rapport with your partners, you develop a personal relation with your partners, you start asking how they are, or how is their son or their daughter that was ill last time you spoke, or all these small talks that doesn't have to take more than a few seconds, but that is building up a rapport and building up this friendship that many of our partnerships are actually built on.
And how often is it that we've you write an email, and because you can't read tone through an email, you sat there thinking, well, actually, I'm sending this email. It's about something that there may be, a little bit of friction or conflict over. Are they going to think I'm angry writing this email? And you put in smiling face emojis or an exclamation mark to kind of let them know that things are okay. Whereas actually, if you was on the phone, you'd have none of those problems.
Exactly.
Because you have the time to kind of go, look, I don't want you to take this wrong way. I really enjoy working with you. I really value our partnership. But this is something that needs
and it might also be a false assumption, but I have the feeling that the cultural differences are just much more expressed when we are writing an email. So my Danish way of writing to somebody, that becomes much more harsh and will be received much more harsh when I do it in written form rather than when I'm speaking, and I will start to start the conversation, to ask interested to their life and how they are and how they're feeling and so on.
So I think there's a question to be asked. So if you take your average 21-year-old that might be coming into your organisation, that might sit there on TikTok and Instagram for their social life. They might communicate with their friends on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, whatever. But then they come into the workplace, and because it seems more professional, they're going to flip onto emails written in a very formal thing. They wouldn't send a WhatsApp message to a colleague, because that's how we perceive that business is meant to be done.
Yeah.
That's what looks like in our heads a professional environment, but is it the most effective tool? So and sometimes we just accept the way we feel things work. So we sit and have meetings, right? Because that's what you do in business. But actually, is having a meeting the most effective way of us working? Elon Musk at Tesla said recently to all his employees, if you sat in any meeting for longer than 10 minutes that feels like it's not productive, you have the opportunity to, you have my permission to walk out of the meeting. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that in every situation, but certainly there's a question there about questioning the way we do business and are there other more effective ways of doing it. I was, quite a few years back, I remember being sat in the office next to a colleague, and then there was another colleague, 2 desks down, and we were all within 2 meters with each other, and they were emailing each other. And I just remember sitting thinking, why are you, they're there, just leave around and kind of go, did you sort out this thing? Now, there's times that you need emails, there's times you need that paper trail, albeit digital, to kind of go, actually, we agreed this, on this date you said you were going to do that. And absolutely, we might be having a conversation with a client or a funder or a venue, and we might kind of agree something on the phone. Absolutely, you come off and just say, great to speak just now, I just want to confirm X, Y, and Z. You send that an email. So if there's ever a dispute or a problem in the future, you go, well, this is what we agreed in that meeting. But and the same reason you would keep minutes from a traditional, in-person meeting. But outside of that, there's a big question about when email is appropriate and when it's better to do it in a face-to-face meeting or phone call. And it's just about looking at all the tools. Yes. It's about looking at Zoom. It's about looking at WhatsApp. It's about looking at email, phone calls, face-to-face meetings, and saying, what is the most effective tool for my business, my organization, to get this job done? Not what is traditionally used. And I think that's the question. And there will be different answers at different stages of your business. And
what is traditionally done, or also what your perception is, what right is, but also what is fancy at the moment. Yeah. I have the feeling that some of those tools, they are kind of fashionable for a year or two, and then something else is fashionable. And it is maybe not just to take what everybody else take, but look at what is useful for you. But I think so. The first learning from this conversation could be that, well, the phone is for the conversation. That's for the deliberation and for the relationship building, whereas the email is for confirming things and often things that you have agreed upon on the phone. But I mean, it's not the phone companies that have hired us to sit here and talk today. So maybe just to take a look at other tools, some specific tools that you're using beyond the email and the phone. If you should mention your favorite communication tool beside those two, what would that be?
I mean, what I would say is the disclaimer. I'm going to talk about the tools that we use in our office and what works for us. But there are a million tools that do different things. And to some extent, and we do this periodically, new stuff comes out, or a colleague or someone else in another firm might go, another organization might go, we found this really good. And it's good to try out different things and think what's the best fit for your organization. For us, we're very big on tasks, so task lists. We've used Microsoft To Do. We've used most of our guys work on iPads as opposed to laptop, because we find that they don't kind of get clumped up and bug all the time. So we use the built-in Apple reminders or Microsoft To Do. And the reason they're really good is because essentially, let me be clearer. So what we do is every member of staff has a task list, and every task on their task list has a date on it. So you don't put anything on your task list saying, you've got to get this report done. When have you got to get that report done? So at the beginning of the day, you can look and say, what tasks have to be done by today? And if you get to whatever point in the day and you said, well, actually the phone's been ringing, this other thing came in that I had to deal with, I'm not going to get my work done. It gives you that opportunity to go to your line manager or someone else in the team and say, look, I've got this work to do today. I'm not going to get it finished by the end of the day. What do you want me to do? And then they can either help with that or kind of go, that's fine, shift these tasks till tomorrow. Now, people kind of say, well, actually, if I put everything for when it's due, some of these jobs, I don't need to do them for a month, but I want to do them for them. That's fine. You put today's tasks, tomorrow's tasks, and there's stuff for a month. If you work for all of today's tasks, then you go on to tomorrow's tasks, then you go on to stuff for the month. But you've got an order of when things are due. The other thing about shared task lists, which is really useful, is I can set tasks for myself as a manager and kind of go, I know that I'm not going to get these tasks done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allocate these members of staff. And then also my office manager can then look at the team that she's got working under her and kind of say, who's got more work on. Actually, this person's only got 3 things to do today. Let's shift some of this person over there. So it's a way of us looking at workload. The other thing we do is we have a meeting every day called 10 at 10. So first thing in the morning, everyone comes in, they start dealing with some of their emails. We have young people on site, so you do your registers. And at 10 o'clock, we have no more than 10 minutes where we sit down and go, what is everyone doing today? What's your priority for the day? That's a really effective tool that we found worked for us. I will say one thing that didn't work, and that was I really pushed for a long time to have weekly office meetings. I catch up what we're working on, blue sky, what projects are coming up. And actually, we kind of sat around after how many months of doing these and said, do these actually help us? And the general feeling is, not really. Let's do these once a month, once every 6 weeks, something like that. So we cut down on some of the meetings we had that we didn't need to have. Because a lot of time you need to have a meeting about a project when it first starts, or a piece of work when it first starts, maybe a meeting midway or towards the end, but you don't need to look at everything every week. It just ends up not being a good use of time.
That's interesting that you're saying that, because I would say here my experience is actually opposite.
Okay.
We are having what we call our Monday meeting, and it doesn't have to be on a Monday. It can be as well on a Wednesday, on a Thursday. We still call them Monday meeting, but we are aiming at once per week to have a meeting where we go through all our portfolio of projects, even those where there is no movement right now. And that has helped us a lot, I feel, to make sure that nothing falls between 2 chairs. Otherwise, we would wish to have a project in our portfolio that have been standing there for half a year, and I go, oh, I believe that you have that under control, and you would believe that I had it under control. By making sure that once per week we address all our projects, we kind of have made sure also that we don't nothing falls between the chairs, nothing is forgotten in this process. So for us, that has been powerful. I do admit that it is a time-consuming thing to have a weekly meeting, and it's like we're aiming at 1 hour, but it's not rare that it has been 2 hours that we have been sitting and going through those projects. But as the one time of the week where the whole office is gathered, all staff sitting around the table, it's also a good occasion to make any announcements. I mean, often small changes happening, and I, as a manager at least, forget to tell everybody about it, to forget to include everybody in this, and not to have the situation where somebody runs around and don't know the last thing that happened in the organization. This meeting point once per week, it's a very good occasion for us.
I think some of this as well is going to be connected to the size of your organization and how many projects you have.
Yes.
Because actually, if the whole organization is just working on one project for the next year, that's all they're going to be doing. Yeah. You might not need to. It's when, like you said, you've got numerous projects, different people leading on different projects. The overall manager might not have a sense of what's going on with every project. Yeah. That's when it becomes important. Another thing, just quickly on the list that we work, and again, this is just a suggestion of what's worked for us. It's not going to work for every organisation of every size. Is that what we do? Is we used to have where you'd have kind of emails and flags, then you'd have a task list, then you might have notes over here. So what happens is now is every email, and this is an idea I stole off a friend of mine, you don't have email flags. So when you have an email, you take the subject and it goes into a task list with a date. So you only ever have one list that you're working on. Even if it's an email that you've got to do, it's in your task list. So that way you've all, and quite a lot of the task things as well, you can copy the subject or you can drag the email over onto the task list. So on our iPads, we have split screens. We'll drag the email into the task list. So when you click on the task, it automatically takes you back to that email. And that way you're not thinking, well, I need to work from emails, but then I need to go back from my task list. And you're kind of juggling between these two things, not knowing where your tasks are, they're in one place. The other thing I think it'd be interesting to talk about is just this, we're in a post-pandemic world where there's this idea of virtual working. A lot of people have to work from home and manage that. I think there's pros and cons. So I've certainly, we've all been in these Zoom meetings and Teams meetings where now I kind of feel like I'm looking forward to get back in the room, because some of those meetings, people are sat there not really talking. You can't have that same level of debate in a Teams meeting. But the flip side of that is it has opened up for a lot of organisations this idea we don't need to be in the same space. So we are, my organisation, I have a finance person that very rarely works from my office. I have a bid writer that's based in India. Originally they were based in the UK, now they're based in India. And it doesn't really make any difference to us where they work, because some members of your team absolutely need to be in the same space, but other members of your team don't. So I think it's about looking at your organisation post-pandemic world and seeing, when do we need to be sat in the same space? When do we need to be in separate? When does it not matter? Because actually, employing someone in another part of the world who might do something that's quite remote from your team, it might be a lot cheaper. It might be more effective. You might be able to get someone who's higher skilled that might want to work for your organisation for a long period of time. So it's worth looking at this kind of global. There's things like Fiverr where you go and get a bit of graphic design done without having to have someone in-house or marketing to do that.
Yeah.
So there's so many different tools and ways of doing it.
Yeah, no, but that's very interesting. I think that brings us to the last thing of this video, and that is exactly the use of those remote workers. I think you're also the first and only person that I met that actually used this remote assistant or virtual assistants. A thought that I found fascinating, that you as a manager can liberate yourself from some of the more easier jobs by getting some virtual assistant to do it. But I'd just like to hear, first of all, how to manage that, how to manage somebody who is sitting that far away, how to manage a virtual assistant and making sure that they are actually doing what you want them to do, rather than what they think that you want them to do. And how do you ensure to keep people, that be a proposal writer sitting in India or a virtual assistant, to keep them motivated and engaged in the work?
I think the motivation thing is difficult, because when you're not part of the team in the same way, it can be difficult. But what I would say about virtual assistants, which I've used virtual assistants in different parts of the world, is it's about skill set. So if I've got to write something, whether it's a funding bid, a business plan, it's core to my organisation, I can't get someone external from the organisation to do that. Even if they're qualified to write at that level, it needs to be something where you're on the ground, you've got that sense. However, if I need to book some accommodation or some travel for a load of participants for a project, it doesn't need me to do that. And actually it's more effective for me to use my time in a different way. And that's where you can really look at bringing in these other people to kind of do stuff, to free you up to do the stuff for your organisation, and your team to do their stuff for the organisation that's really beneficial for the organisation.
That's so interesting. Thank you so much for giving those inputs.